Well, with just 10 days before South Africans go to the polls, one professor is questioning the electoral system. He says it needs urgent reform. Sociology professor Roger Southall from Wits University joins me via Skype now to have this conversation. Professor, 10 days before the elections, you're questioning really the validity and even the effectiveness of the electoral system. Tell me what brings you about that line of questioning and that almost scrutiny really of the electoral system.
Well, I'm actually not saying anything new. It's been said before, and it was said in 1992 by the Van Zyl-Slabbert Commission on Electoral Reform. It's simply the case that our electoral system gives us numerical representativity, but it doesn't give us substantive representativity, really, because the MPs are accountable to their parties rather than the people who vote for them.
And then in that sense, then, so you're looking at suggesting one system that would allow for the people to vote for the candidates, so that indeed those people that are even voted into Parliament end up being accountable to the very same people who put them there.
Yes, but I mean, I think South Africa adopted the national list PR system, proportional representation system, in 1994 for a very good reason, because we had to maximise the representativity of political opinion in this country. But I think practice has shown that the party system, as established, is not really working to establish accountability. So the obvious suggestion is that we go back to what the Van Zyl-Slabbert Commission suggested, which was a mixed member proportional system, which basically gives us large constituencies with multi-member MPs who then are accountable to citizens in particular constituencies. They're large constituencies, but it would mean that individuals do have MPs who are meant to represent them in Parliament. They would have them to go to, and there would be a display of different parties available. If you're a DA voter, you'll probably find a DA representative. If you're an ANC voter, you're bound to find an ANC representative.
Do you think that in that way, almost an arrogance by many political parties will be curbed, in the sense that when you know that there are various candidate lists that already get selected by the branches themselves of whichever political constituents, and then those very same candidates get into Parliament, and one will presume that even there's a certain arrogance, and maybe even that even breeds corruption in the end, where political parties do not necessarily feel an accountability to the people? Would that then now solve issues and maybe tackle issues of corruption, tackle issues of lack of accountability, of lack of service delivery, where a lot of our parliamentarians and even a lot of our politicians are concerned?
Well, I don't think changing the electoral system is like having a magic wand. I think the suggestion is that it would probably improve the situation and improve chances of accountability. Where it works well, for instance in New Zealand, where they have changed to MMP, multi-member PR, it has worked, I think. So it is possible to change your electoral system and have improved results. I think it would go some considerable way to solving the sense that people have that they're disempowered once the election is over.
And then on the other side of it, would you then see that, or I'm going to ask you just about the opinion of a coalition government. I mean, we heard a few days ago that President Cyril Ramaphosa was speaking about how South Africa is simply not a mature enough democracy to even have a coalition-run country or based country in that sense. Would you agree or disagree with his sentiments?
I think you could turn it around and say that perhaps South Africa is not a mature enough democracy to be able to stand one party in rule unchallenged for 25 years. I think that coalition government need not be chaotic. It could lead to actual consensus. It could lead to some sort of agreement across party lines, which may be productive. As I say, you change the electoral system, you don't necessarily change people's behaviour, but it will, I think, increase the chances of our MPs being more representative of the opinion of people who actually put them into power.
And on that point, though, that unfortunately, when it comes to certain theories and certain implementations and policies around how an electoral system should be, one would say that it's most effective where human beings are not involved. In other words, any form of government works as long as they're not people who are running those governments. And simply because there is human error, there's issues around human behavior, there's greed that is involved, there's a capitalistic agenda that is involved. And then in that sense then, how would an electoral system like this be implemented so that indeed, number one, the people feel represented, but number two, unfortunately, the very same system that you're proposing does have loopholes where people can start electing people that have bought the votes, people that are they've got some form of agenda, people that are not necessarily representative of wanting to serve people, but rather representative of people that are paying them to get to the top.
Well, you're correct in raising that. If you go to first past the post systems where there are constituencies around the African continent and elsewhere, particularly if you look at the United States, you'll find that money does play a role in elections. I think what you've got to do, if you have an MMP system with large constituencies, you've got to ensure the independence of the Electoral Commission. You've got to ensure the independence of the people who draw up the boundaries of the constituencies, and you have to ramp up your electoral laws to make sure that people are obeying them. We've got a lot of anti-corruption devices in this country if only we're prepared to use them. Of course, politicians, or some politicians, are going to be quite prepared to kick over the traces and act only in their interest. It's up to us as citizens and to use the institutions which we've got to make sure they actually behave and represent the people who elect them.
And then in the South African context, how would we be able to implement that? And obviously it's just amending certain aspects of the Constitution that binds us in terms of how we operate. But how would you see this unfolding in the South African context? And another question is, where the country is at the moment in time, and I'm taking rural communities, I'm taking peri-urban areas. Are we as a people, are we as a country mature enough, democratically sound enough? Are we that kind of democracy now where we can start introducing a different electoral system that would allow for multi-party representation, that would allow for multi-party members as well within any form of a parliamentary framework?
I don't think you're really asking too much of the voters. I think it's dangerous to think that the voters are stupid, that they can't understand things. It would still be a PR system. They would still have, voters would still have political parties to vote for on a proportionate basis. And they would have individuals to vote for too. And if they don't like the individuals, then they can vote. Then they can vote for another individual. So I think it's a mix. As I said earlier, it's not going to solve all our problems, but I think it would be a way on the route to improvement.
Yeah. And Professor, just before I let you go, will that not then give rise to populism? The politics of popularity instead of the politics of servitude? Because in what we found in many countries is the one that is able to have, let's use America for example, the one that seems to have the most robust rhetoric with the greatest financial backing almost appears to win. Look at America. America has got a former reality TV star as their president. Ultimately, does that not give way to populism instead of somebody who's able to actually serve the people for the interests of the people?
Well, the implication of the question is that the system we've got now is preventing populism, which it isn't. Certainly, we're not talking like the United States, where money just swirls around the whole system. We've got a lot of money in our politics, but there is some, I think, movement towards greater control. And I think, as I said earlier, if you're going to change the electoral system, you do need to back it up with various laws and practices which make sure that it actually works and that you maximise the benefits of a new system.
Professor, we're going to leave our conversation there, but quite insightful, especially when it comes to being able to think about better ways of making this democracy work, actually. And that is Professor Roger Southall.